It's so good to have you here, and you have the knack to connect with the youth, and you have been a great influence, especially for women over the last few years. Your brand has demonstrated passion, and you have managed to bring back the traditional craftsmanship of jutis with a contemporary twist, of course. Now, being from the world of creativity, fashion, how do you see mental health?
Thanks, Asta. It's so good to be here and to be a part of such an important discussion. While there are so many experts on mental health here on this forum, so I'm not going to touch on, sort of how to handle that. But, the entire time I was listening to everyone, Shweta, Abhinav, Sagar, ma'am, my entire thought process was, should I go experiential or not? I have never talked about my personal life before. It's always been regards to work and my workspace. But I've also never been a part of a mental health or mental well-being forum. So this is the first time. And I was thinking, should I not? But seeing 100 odd participants in this and given the topic, I think it's very important for me to for the first time speak about it. So I'm going to go like a personal a personal experience through this journey. So I just want to talk about it's for women and children out there. So Asta, you might know, me and Asta also know each other personally, apart from this forum. So I lost my father at a very young age, extremely young age. Suddenly, a few years later, a couple of years later, I lost my real sister, who was only a year and a half younger than me, again at a very young age, and we were very close. Due to that stress, me and my brother developed chronic illnesses, which obviously had an impact on my mother, and which sort of like just it just sort of like developed my personality the way it is, and developed us as a nuclear family, me, my mother, and my brother. Right, from five of us, we got down to three of us, with two of her children having chronic illnesses, and her herself dealing with mental meltdowns and breakdowns every so often. Right. What I want to say is mental well-being is not just an end goal. It's a continuous learning process, which we don't realize. Everybody says, "Oh, X has happened, and this is like this major thing that's happened in my life, and now I need to work towards a mental well-being. I need to get stable." What you don't realize is that human life is so long and it's so complex that in every phase and every step of your life, you're going to deal with an enormous setback. That might be smaller than the previous one, might be bigger, but every time you hit a setback, it's a setback. So the other day I was talking to somebody, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and she was talking about her therapy. And that's the first, I have a lot of conversations with my colleagues at work. I just think, I'm just a chatty person, and I talk to people and personal relationships form of personality. And as I mean, and I mean, consciously, I hire a lot of women. It's sort of like it just creates a nicer environment. It's just you're emotionally more you're available in terms of workspace and professionals for each other. And I've seen that massively at my workspace. So obviously, you become friends. And she said something to me which I thought was so incredible. She said, she was talking about her therapy session, and she said, Shireen, if our parents or the earlier generation received therapy, we'd be much more balanced. And she said, but because we have so much access to therapy and there's so much conversation around therapy, and the fact that we're receiving therapy, I hope that the next generation is more balanced out and they understand the importance of mental wellness. So I'm just going to go back to what I was saying about my personal experience. So obviously, after having the certain setbacks, you sort of nobody talks. We decided, me and my brother and my mom decided not to talk about it or not to cry in the open, so that it wouldn't hurt the other person, right? So we try to create this defense mechanism for ourselves and for each other. And what happened is, we started crying in sort of personal spaces. We didn't talk about it, but then it would come out in like big things. Like I would open the door and I would see my mom howling. I would just, we would get a dream, and my brother would say in passe, "Oh, I got a dream about, X," and I could see him almost melting, and suddenly he would snap out of it and he would walk out of the door. What happened is that three of us became so we started developing these anxieties, right? The biggest and the most common anxiety, which I have realized 20 years later in the pandemic, is three of us have extreme high health anxieties. Like a friend of mine gets sick, if my mom or my brother, even like have a viral, even have a mild fever, the entire house, right? Because none of us ever received help. I wish when we hit the massive setbacks that we did, I wish someone said that, listen, the kids need to go in for counseling or a session of therapy just to understand how they're feeling, how to handle happiness and not happen, just handle grief and happiness. We also had extended families I remember this very, very clearly when my sister passed away. I was just a few days, and obviously my mom was in a really, really bad condition. And my mom's brothers had come, and my cousins had come, and they were trying to cheer her up. So a joke was cracked, and she laughed, and I'll never forget this. And a friend or someone of my mom had come to sort of like be a part of the grief, and she opened the door. And my mom was laughing, because my uncle had just cracked a joke. And the minute my mom saw that lady, she went pale. And I know why she went pale. She went pale out of the judgment of her having that laugh for that moment, even though her child just passed away a few days ago. And even though that was a moment, but what was that other person going to think? Or why, or even self guilt of why did she have to laugh? Why did she deserve it? And this stuck with, and I mean, now 20 years later, I still think about that one episode and so many more episodes that happened at that time. And nobody ever turned to my mother and said, listen, your kids need therapy or you need to go in for therapy. Just feel better. Just to understand that it's okay to be happy and it's okay not to be happy. But what we learned through this process was gratitude, like Sagar ma'am said, and I think that is a defense mechanism, and a lot of people don't learn it. But what happened is a lot of my friends used to tell me, Shireen, when we look at you, we don't know, we don't, I mean, nobody can tell that you've gone through this. And I said, and I always say, I mean, but what choice do I have? Do I have the choice to permanently shut down, or do I have the choice to live on? And this my mother taught me over the time. She says, you have to live on. You get sucked, because we're living in India, we do get sucked into situations like astrologers and priests and things like that, right? So when you're going through so much and nobody talks about therapy, you cling on to any support that you can. And I remember my mother saying, don't do that, don't get into that situation. She said live on, be grateful. She says, X person, this happened to them, X person, that happened to them. You're still better off, you still have everything going for you. You still have your mom, you still have your brother, we have each other. And that gratitude sort of just helped me pull through. That short, I was getting married, the most happiest time in my life. Of course, we were all very excited. And again, the same past starts to haunt you, right? Oh, I'm going to leave. Who's going to look after my mom? My brother's young. What about the health? The health suffers. Where am I going to be? Will they ever tell me, oh, this happened, that happened? Even in the good times, what happens is that your grief or your anxieties pull you down. And then obviously Needledust happened, and I've been so I think about these things very consciously. I don't shut it out, so I always think about, okay, these are my fears and these are my worries. Why do my fears come? Why do my worries come? And it's a continuing learning process. So obviously the pandemic happened. What the pandemic did to me as a professional and as an individual was, before the pandemic, in regards to needle dust, you're very competitive. I'm a very competitive person and I compete with myself. I want to always do better, but what happens is it creates a lot of pressure on you. The fashion industry in itself is massive. There's a lot of competition, not just competition would be a right way, but there's a lot of pressure of like excelling creatively, right? So when you're excelling something, and a lot of people say, oh, emotions and creativity is intertwined. They might be to a certain extent, but not throughout, not all the way. So when we're launching a collection, and then there are the time limits. Oh, I have a collection yet or not? How will the collection be perceived? The numbers, then what the sales are like, what the sales are not like. Every single day I was working for 14 hours at least, given even weekends, and just understanding where my business is. What the pandemic did was it hit a dead end, right? Nobody could do anything. We were all sitting at home. There were no laptops to open. Of course, we all did webinars, but they weren't. I mean, your webinar is an hour a day or 2 hours a day, whereas I was working 14 hours a day. It gave me a lot of time to think, just think, sit back. I went through a very, very a big emotional downer, as I say, and purely because I had so much time to think about myself individually. And I said, oh my, what if my business doesn't work? business doesn't come back, or what if my work doesn't come back, or oh my god, I'm feeling like my health anxieties are getting back. Constantly thinking because of my brother's chronic illnesses or my mom, oh my god, are they doing well? Are they feeling well? What if COVID gets to them? All of these things started surfacing all of a sudden again. The first thing I did is I thought about my colleagues. I rolled out an email saying, I know we're all going through things individually, whether it could be home or you're feeling something professionally. Please reach out so I can get you in touch with counselors if you may need. Please talk to one another. And if you find it difficult to talk to one another, talk to professionals because it's really important. And I remember having this discussion also with Astha and telling her that we want to do this. And I did roll out. And I did honestly think there would be some takers, but there were none. There were absolutely none takers. But I didn't want to question them as to why. But I thought it was very important for me as a business owner to sort of do that for your like a community, within your office. What I also did was I reached out myself for a conversation because I understood the importance 20 years later that I had not entirely dealt with my health anxieties. Which massively helped me. Now, why I say mental wellness is a continuous process and not an end goal. I obviously, got into conversations and counseling, and I felt like, oh, I'm feeling much, much better. My husband's like, oh, you're looking much better. Your conversations, you're looking lighter. And I really felt happy. In the middle of the pandemic, my mother, for the first time, got really sick and had to be in the hospital, and the doctors had also had sort of a conversation, and I had to go stay with her in the hospital. And I remember and I was so scared because she got sick pretty seriously. And I remember sending my cousin started messaging me and saying, "How are you doing? And how's your mom?" And this is after receiving help for my health anxieties. I sent a message to my cousin saying, "I wish I was never born. Like I have to go through this every few years, like first, my dad, and then my sister, and then my brother, and then myself, and now my mom." And I said, I can't bear it anymore. And that's when I realized that even after taking help, you can't train your mind 100. It's a continuous process. You can't stop. You can't just think that, oh, I've received it and I'm feeling good, and nothing that ever happens will create a negative impact on me. And it did again. But what that made me realize is that the importance of mental wellness continuously. And now there's a lot of shift in the conversations that's happened at home because of the pandemic and at workspace, where we talk about competition, we talk about work pressures, deadlines, and I hear myself, and sometimes some people can be like, oh, that's not what a boss should say. After we set deadlines, I said, guys, okay, kya ho jayega? 2 din late ho jayega, hafta late ho jayega. Don't worry, let's just put in our best. And we never go beyond work hours. We have an 8.5-hour work shift, and I try not to hit beyond it because I always feel that you need to switch off from any sort of pressure and sort of resume, like hit reboot back to work, back to your own self. And we try to do that. And I think just making little adjustments in life, in workspaces, if there are any entrepreneurs here, just to try to have open conversations at work, even once a week, an hour away from just work related things. If you can just check on each other and just ask even your colleagues how they're doing, do they need any help, just to have just a heart to heart conversation. I think it goes a long way. At home, I said that in my quote when Reboot asked me, and I said mental wellness has a lot to do with your physiological well-being. We hear things like revenge board, comfort food. All those things come from mental wellness. If you're not feeling mentally good, that your first comeback to it is, oh, I need a haircut, I'm going to feel good. Or you know what, I want to eat a tub of ice cream, I'm going to feel good. Or hey, you know what, I'm going to hit the gym and get a revenge board, so other people look at me and I'm looking great, and that's going to make me feel good. But those things are momentarily. Those things are not a permanent change. To create permanent changes, I think the dialogue of mental wellness and therapy and counseling needs to be stronger. We've come a long way, which I think is so incredible, but I think we still have a long way to go. Sorry, Asa.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you for, first of all, sharing so much of your personal journey, and just humanizing our conversation today. You've just added that element of, reaching out to all our emotions, of humanizing this entire experience of what mental health is. And, some of the things that you said, little changes that we can bring about at our workplaces can go a long way to just changing the environment. And I genuinely agree with you when you say that, when we reach out to one person, the one person that we reach out to has the ability to reach out to one more and then one more, and that's how the chain of empathy and compassion just spreads forward. So just thank you so much, Shireen. We're getting a lot of messages from a lot of our attendees who are thanking you for sharing your personal journey, and like I said, for humanizing this for us. Thank you very much.